With the Fantastic Four First Steps now officially released by both Disney and Marvel, and its opening weekend totaling out to $260 million global, alright, that's not domestic, that is global numbers, and we already know that there's a lot of differing opinions out there by Marvel fans, a lot of which are labeling this as a somewhat weak and subpar film. Meanwhile, you have other fans out there that just thought it was an okay or a good movie, not a great movie or a masterpiece or anything like that. But what's really interesting here is that we have people like Pedro Pascal getting very political, striking back at Marvel fans, getting very defensive, and the same exact thing applies here with Disney CEO Bob Iger, in the midst of many critics bringing up past movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, aka Ant-Man 3, which actually had a very similar opening weekend to Fantastic Four, and we all know how that film turned out to be, right? This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing about Fantastic Four is that we know that for a Fantastic Four film, a lot of people are calling this as the best of the four. I know, it's quite ironic. You got 4 Fantastic Four films, alright? 2005, 2007, and then you had Fan 4 Stick, which is what I like to call it, by the way. Terrible movie, and then you got this one. And I will say, and I can confirm this, that after seeing this movie, it is definitely the best out of all 4. But when you're looking at specific characters, there are some things that could have been done better. It's only a good popcorn flick as far as I'm concerned. Nothing all that special. I thought it was just kind of meh, just kind of okay. But that's just my take on things. There are a lot of opportunities that were missed. However, when it comes to Disney CEO Bob Iger, this is where things begin to really go out of control. Now, with the Fantastic Four box office hitting $216 million globally for its opening weekend, many critics recently came forward debating on the performance of that number and comparing it to other films like Captain America 4 and Ant-Man Quantumania that had a similar opening weekend globally that were both subpar films by Marvel fans. Now, recently, Disney CEO Bob Iger decided to come forward and defend Disney from box office critics, where he delivered the following. As CEO, it is 100% my responsibility to remain direct and transparent with our shareholders and customers in relation to our recent projects, one of which that we are so proud of right now is the Fantastic Four First Steps, which is our greatest story about motherhood. However, what we here at the Disney company do not tolerate are self-labeled critics putting our film in a position of failure when we have made something spectacular. I urge every critic out there to refrain from comparing box office metrics of other films to this film alone, because that is not a valid argument or a debate to bring up when discussing the success or failure of a project. As always, this is more than likely coming from a political landscape when it involves those trying to put a film down. A film that so many talented actors like Pedro Pascal worked very hard on for the role of Reed Richards. I am here to display my confidence in this film, and I have no concerns for its performance both in the short term and in the long term. I think it's necessary right now that many of these so-called critics, comparing the box office metrics of this film to others, to stay silent over making such comparisons, as it only hurts the experience for long and loyal Marvel fans around the globe. I think it's a unnecessary argument and debate coming from critics when comparing our film to past projects like Captain America: Brave New World and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Now guys, let me just stop right there. Now that is something a lot of critics are bringing up right now as a debate, as a conversation piece, right? A lot of critics out there are comparing the opening weekend of Fantastic Four to Brave New World and Ant-Man 3. Now, Brave New World was a little bit off in comparison to Fantastic Four's opening weekend, globally speaking. I believe it was like $190-some million, if I'm correct. But it's close enough there. Ant-Man 3 definitely was closer and more accurate of an opening to Fantastic Four, and we know that that movie was a terrible film to many Marvel fans out there, and it really was a financial failure. And again, to be very clear, this definitely is the best story or plot out of all the 4 Fantastic Four films, but one thing about it is that there are some characters, in my opinion, that are worse than the ones that we saw in 2005 and 2007. For example, I'm not a fan at all of Pedro Pascal's take on Reed Richards. I think that what we saw in 05 and 07 was way better with Reed Richards. Same exact thing applies to The Thing and other examples of Johnny Storm. I just think that there's a lot of characters, when you look back at 05 and 07, that I actually valued more. As far as the story goes, the core story, you know, definitely more entertaining in that sense. But what's interesting about all of this is that he goes on to go on further. I think he goes on to actually elaborate further, as those are character-dependent films when it comes to Ant-Man Quantumania and Brave New World in their own way. Keep in mind, I can't stress this enough, that these are the very same type of critics that label Disney as engaging in a culture war or propaganda for the past several years for all of our brands like Marvel, Star Wars, and more. And it's something that we do not tolerate here at the Disney company. We ask everyone to let the product make its course in the theaters, and to not listen to any politically biased critics that are obviously attempting to paint this film as a failed project. And look, guys, I don't think that's what any critics are trying to do. They're just pointing out obvious things out there. They're actually trying to create debates out there and have very interesting conversations. That's all what it really is. And look, let me be very clear about this. When I say that this is probably the most entertaining Fantastic Four film out of all the 4 movies, it's really not saying all that much as far as I see things, because all of these movies really did get a lot of things wrong. They were never completely done right. And look, I think that 05 and 07, they were more of a popcorn, you know, fun movie. And I would definitely say that this is also just a good popcorn movie. Nothing great at all. Nothing really spectacular. Nothing really fantastic, quote unquote. No pun intended. But what's interesting about that is that we all know that everything related to Fantastic Four is that this movie in isolation, it had so many missed opportunities. They could have done so much better with it. They really could have done a lot of different things with Galactus, a lot of other things with the Silver Surfer. You know, I wasn't really a fan of them excluding Nor and Rad, for example, there. That is something that everyone wanted to see on the big screen again since 2007. However, he goes on to actually conclude, we hold a firm belief that Fantastic Four First Steps will be a wider success than Avengers Endgame altogether, and all around between box office metrics and fan reception. Again, there goes Bob Iger, making it out that this movie is going to be bigger than Avengers Endgame, and better received than Avengers Endgame, and I just don't see that happening. I think it's a very desperate, you know, comment that he actually made, very similar to what Pedro Pascal said before in the past about Fantastic Four. It just reeks desperation. He goes on to actually conclude, and we ask everyone to not pay any attention to negative criticism in regards to our latest project. Our goal is to bring fans back to the cinema. As CEO, it is also my goal to establish the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how I can confirm that this will be central to the future of Marvel between myself and Kevin Feige and what he has planned for the next several years. And again, he's throwing DEI into the equation of this argument, confirming that it will be a main focus for the future of Marvel. Another, you know, overwhelming thing that he's bringing up that nobody wants to hear. But overall, whether you saw the film or not, let me know what you guys have to say about the Fantastic Four between the press tour, the marketing campaign, or the film itself, if you guys actually got a chance to go ahead and see it, or know anybody else that actually got a chance to go ahead and see it. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.